Good morning and welcome to the fourth hour with Greg Belfrage. If you're new to what we're doing here on YouTube, this follows the daily radio show that I do, 3 hour radio show on KELO in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that we do each day. And so these are stories that have not been heard during the radio show. There are some things that are happening this morning. Axios has got a story this morning saying that moments before former President Trump took the stage at the National Association of Black Journalists and their annual convention, that the president of that organization was called to address an issue because Trump was refusing to go on stage. According to reports, Donald Trump was refusing to go on stage. There were audio problems. And I think what they're trying to do is spin the audio problems because Trump and his campaign is saying there were audio problems. That's why. I mean, and they're saying that Trump did not want to be fact checked. That's what the sticking point was. Donald Trump did not want to be fact checked during that interview, or during that conversation, that he didn't want fact checks. And that's why it was delayed. And the Trump campaign is just saying there were audio problems. In fact, there were, even once that they started, there were audio problems that were plaguing that. So that's at least what Axios is reporting. So now I want to give you another point of view. Harris Faulkner of Fox News Channel was one of the journalists who was a part of that. And Harris Faulkner, there's a story this morning on the Blaze. Harris Faulkner talking about what was happening at the during this, and again, I think just about any time you've got Donald Trump making an appearance, it's generating headlines, especially when it's at the National Association of Black Journalists event. Trump was there. So Harris Faulkner, there were several journalists who were there and asking questions. Harris Faulkner was one of them. And Faulkner, I'll tell you very candidly, is somebody I respect. I've watched enough of her work on Fox News Channel, having seen pieces that she has done, her questions, her comments. Excuse me. I'm going to take a drink here. Excuse me. She is just really somebody that I respect, Harris Faulkner. So Harris Faulkner says, she said immediately, and this was pretty amazing. It was Rachel Scott from ABC News who started off. She was the first one. And I had seen some reporting on this over the course of the last few days. Rachel Scott never even does any introduction to Trump saying, good morning, Mr. President, or good evening, whatever. But any kind of perfunctory kind of, introduction, or it's nice to have you here, or thank you for joining us, any of that, nothing. She just, bam, starts right out with a question. And now Trump even reacted to that. But let's give you Harris Faulkner's take on this. She said she didn't say hello to Trump, immediately began to grill him, implying that he's a racist. And so she says, it didn't take much to show humanity. And in that moment, I was so disappointed that didn't happen. That again, they didn't even make an attempt to try to show any kind of I would call it basic decency. I mean, seriously, you've got a former president of the United States, love him or hate him. If I were to have somebody who was a guest on my program, and it was somebody that I would tell you, okay, I don't respect this person. I don't have a lot of respect for them. However, I would not allow that to come across during the interview. I would try hard not to. I would still treat them like it were somebody else that I loved having on the program. You know what I mean? Um, and so she said, Faulkner saying there were a number of problems with the event. She says, Trump wasn't given a proper welcome. He walks out on stage and not a greeting to acknowledge it's been 18 days at that point since you survived an assassination attempt. You know, we're going to ask you tough questions, but Mr. President, welcome. You're still here. I mean, it didn't take much to show humanity. And in that moment, I was so disappointed that didn't happen. I couldn't control it, but it got things off to an emotional start. And you and I both know that once that happens and you're interviewing someone, there is an agenda, she said. This is what Faulkner. Now, again, she's a black journalist. She's talking about the other black journalists who are up there. So when that happens, there's an agenda. Frankly, I know that's the case anytime I see logos like ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox. There's an agenda. I'm not surprised by that. I'm always disappointed, but never surprised. Harris Faulkner said, she went on to talk about a prediction about the 2024 election. And she said, the only color that will matter is green. She said, I don't know that people are going to vote on the color of their skin and the hair texture this time around. This is about money. The color is green. This is what Harris Faulkner is saying. And again, Harris Faulkner is somebody, I can appreciate her take and I can appreciate her honesty. And this, because then I draw the conclusion that Harris Faulkner is somebody to be respected, that she is a person of integrity. I would not say that about a number of people in the media today, if you if you know what I mean. So those are big stories this morning. Let's move on. I've got some other stuff here that I want to share with you. This is from the New York Post. Bully Kamala Harris berated staff, left them in tears after berating them with F-bombs. An intern told never to make eye contact. That headline got my attention at the New York Post. Kamala Harris throws around F-bombs and constantly berated her staff when she was California Attorney General, according to a shocking report. This is an unearthed op-ed from 2019, published in the California newspaper, describes the eye-opening month that his son spent as an intern for Harris. And this was written by Professor Terry McKeeter and in 2019 and was published, and it's now just resurfaced. McKeeter is a Democrat with generational political ties to the party, claimed his son was subject. So again, what would you expect? Okay, he's a Democrat, generational political ties to the party. What would you then expect? He sends his son off to intern or, be an aide for Kamala Harris. And what would you expect? You would expect then to be treated with respect, right? Not the case. And McKeeter wrote, this is 2019. Harris vocally throws around F-bombs and other profanity constantly in her berating of staff and others. As AG, Harris instructed her entire staff to stand every morning as she entered the office and say, "Good morning, General." Wow. Wow. Yes. And that's who's running for president, right? Okay. Gregory was also given instructions never to address Harris nor look her in the eye, as that privilege, it was a privilege that was allowed only for senior staff members. So unless you're a senior staff, you do not look her in the eye. You do not. Oh, you'll find that story at the New York Post. I don't want to continue to read because that's their article, but I want to push you to go read it there. The New York Post is where you'll find that piece. But I mean, seriously, are you now? This is where I'm always interested in your comments. Do you see anything there surprise you about Kamala Harris? Wow, crazy. Hey, thanks for your I've got a couple of you on board. Thanks, Sean, for giving the fourth hour a like. Very much appreciated. Steve Reno, always good to see you, buddy. Perhaps we're in a cycle that is back to kitchen table issues rather than made up nonsense. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the vice president was going through staff like tissue paper. Yeah. Due to her toilet paper, due to her treatment of them. Yeah, she was. I mean, she was hemorrhaging staff, and it was the same thing as vice president. Hemorrhaging staff, go look at the numbers. I have even touched on this at times during the show. You know, she has had a lot of turnover in her office. And the reason is she's horrible to people. She's just absolutely miserable. Now, again, when I say that, everybody goes, "Oh, Republican," you know. No. This is coming from Democrat donors sending their children to work then as interns in Kamala Harris's office when she was California Attorney General and saying it's absolutely horrible. These are Democrat donors. So then again, where's the explosion of money then for the Kamala Harris campaign coming from? If she is berating her staff in that kind of way, is absolutely incredible. So go read the rest of that story then at the New York Post. Another story I want to share with you this morning, and we talked about this on the air this morning about this Algerian fighter in this Olympic boxing gender controversy. And there have been some different reactions, which is why I want to share this with you. Amy Broadhurst is a boxing world champion, and Amy Broadhurst is among the women to have beaten this Aman Khalif, who was the fighter then in the middle of this gender controversy at the Paris Olympics. And Broadhurst is from Ireland. And she actually defeated then Khalif in the finals in the 2022 International Boxing Association World Championships. So she has beaten Khalif. And Khalif then was disqualified from the 2023 tournament because the IBA president said that Khalif had XY chromosomes. But Broadhurst said of this, she said, I have a lot of people texting me over Aman Khalif. Personally, I don't think she's done anything to cheat. I think it's the way she was born, and that's out of her control. The fact that she has been beaten by 9 females before says it all. So, a different perspective. There are those who are, there are a number of stories out there. Some are seeing it as, is Khalif a male? There's evidence to support that, in fact, is not the case. And what you've got Broadhurst saying is that, hey, you've got other women who have beaten Khalif before. The fact that this boxer, didn't, the no controversy here, and this is the way that she was born, but she seems to be a little bit dismissive of it, and understandably so. Another story that's new this morning I wanted to share with you. Kyle Rittenhouse. You remember Kyle Rittenhouse? He's saying he's criticizing Trump on the Second Amendment and saying he won't vote for Donald Trump this time around. He's voting actually for Ron Paul, I think he said. Yeah, he will write in Ron Paul for president. So Rittenhouse posted a video to X, and he says, you must stand by your principles. That's how he, and then there's a video below. And he said, unfortunately, Donald Trump has bad advisors, making him bad on the Second Amendment. And that is my issue, he said. He said, if you cannot be completely uncompromisable on the Second Amendment, I will not vote for you. And I will write somebody else in. We need champions for the Second Amendment, or our rights would be eaten away and eroded each day. I support my decision, and I have no takebacks. So you've got Kyle Rittenhouse saying he's going to be writing in Ron Paul because Donald Trump is weak on the Second Amendment. You know, there have been issues revolving around Trump and Trump's advisors and the people he, winds up, who does he select then for positions then in his administration. And there was, and forgive me, I'm not good with names. I've never been good with names. And I've got to say, since my stroke 3 years ago, I'm even worse with names today. I remember instances, but the name just eludes me. But it was an interview that Tucker Carlson did on his program, and I talked about it because he made some comments that really kind of struck me. And one of the things he talked about was Donald Trump. And then he expected, he'd been a big Donald Trump supporter from the beginning, and he was there, and he expected that he was going to get, some kind of a position then in the Trump administration, or at least be able to name people who might be worthwhile. And Donald Trump, he said, didn't appoint all of these people that he believed that he would. And that Donald Trump was appointing then people from the swamp, the same people who would, were never for Trump and so on. And he was pretty frustrated by that. So what you're hearing, I think, here from Kyle Rittenhouse, about Donald Trump being weak on the Second Amendment is, I think it's a question for a number of Trump supporters. Who is he going to, should he win? And I'm not assuming that's hardly a foregone conclusion. But assuming that he wins, who are the people that he's going to put in charge? Who is he going to name as cabinet secretaries? Who will be the people that he surrounds himself with? And I think Trump has had some bad judgment when it comes to that kind of stuff. Trump has not always surrounded himself with the best people, if you know what I mean. Well, David, I appreciate your comment. The Olympics, I'm missing part of that. Too woke, he's saying. The Olympics has gone too woke for me this year. I think that's kind of been the case of sports in general, but I want to be careful because, we have, and I shared some of these as big stories this morning because they are. You have Simone Biles, for instance, and her performance and what she's able to do at her age. She's young. I'm not saying she's old, but as an Olympic gymnast, she's old. She's 27. And yet you see the medals that she's picking up and the success that she's seeing in Paris this time around. There are some really great success stories to tell. So I want to be careful. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that what's going on with the Olympics is too broke, or is too woke, rather. I think the Olympic Committee can be that way, you know, lean that way. So I'm mindful of it, but we're seeing some. Katie Ledecky is another one, and her accomplishments so far already in the Olympic Games. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want to be careful. Sean saying, I believe Trump will make better choices for cabinet secretaries and other positions because of his bad experiences during the first term. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then David said too, I respect and honor the athletes. I'm with you, David. I absolutely just incredible things going on at the Olympics this year. All right, I've got one other story I wanted to share with you. As you know, Jonathan Turley is somebody that I greatly admire. Jonathan Turley, who is a professor of law at George Washington University, and he is a columnist at the New York Post, and he's got a piece that was published earlier this week, a couple of days ago, and I'm just seeing it this morning because I follow Jonathan Turley to see it. He posts a new column kind of infrequently, maybe a couple of times. I mean, he might go for a week or more before you see him publish a new column. So I checked this morning. And Jonathan Turley has got a column, an opinion piece at the New York Post. Joe Biden tries to sacrifice the Supreme Court, not for democracy, but for the far left. Turley, okay. Well, again, Turley is a Democrat, but he is not a dyed-in-the-wool typical Democrat. He considers himself a libertarian. So you're a libertarian. Oftentimes you see, I know libertarians who register as Republicans rather than as part of the Libertarian Party. They like the choices better on the Republican side. So it's not unusual that you have a libertarian then registering as a Democrat. That would be Jonathan Turley. So Turley's got this piece. It starts out, it says, President and Supreme Court Chief Justice William Howard Taft once said, presidents come and go, but the Supreme Court goes on forever. But not if Joe Biden has his way. Indeed, both the president and the court, as we know it, could be gone. In a failed attempt to save his nomination, Biden offered to reform the court by imposing an 18-year term limit that would jettison the three most senior conservative justices. With only 6 months left in his presidency, Biden's efforts are likely to fail, but unfortunately could set the stage for activists under a Harris administration in seeking to change the court forever. It's a really great point that Jonathan Turley is making. And I would say that is one of a number of reasons why I could not vote for Kamala Harris and will not vote for Kamala Harris. We were talking about Trump a few moments ago. There are things about Donald Trump, I will tell you very candidly, I would change. Absolutely. There are things about Trump that I would change. But voting for Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, it's not even, for me, a question. There's no contest. It's not a contest. And what Turley is writing here about, the U.S. Supreme Court and the president and, Biden, even though Biden is not running, he's still pushing this malarkey about the Supreme Court, trying to expand the court. Now, what I have read and I want to be careful because I read things and doesn't necessarily mean that, for instance, we had House Speaker Mike Johnson saying, all of this is dead on arrival. This is all dead on arrival, never will happen. I'd love to believe that, but I don't know that that will be the case. I think we'll have to wait and see as to whether or not that's actually, but and then he goes on. I wanna close with, I wanna get to the closing here because generally he kind of brings everything together. He said this, according to the Washington Post, the president made his pledge in a Zoom call to the left-wing Congressional Progressive Caucus and saying the pledge will be dead on arrival in Congress. What is left is a King Lear-like tragedy of a presidency, betrayed by those closest to him and wandering the land for continued relevance. History will show a pitiful figure who offered up the court as the cost of staying in power only to lose his candidacy and his legacy. Kind of an interesting take by Jonathan Turley. Now, again, that piece was written before this latest, the big news yesterday and this morning has been the exchange of hostages between the United States, actually a number of countries, and Russia. So political prisoners that are being exchanged and released. And I talked about that at length on the program this morning because legitimately it was a big story, as I say, of the last few days. So Biden's now legacy might be more of, look what, and that was the response from the White House. Look at what we've accomplished. This will be Joe Biden's legacy. Yeah. I think the real truth of the Biden administration, I hope the real truth comes out. Because I don't think, despite what the political spinners in the White House are saying, yeah, afraid not, that will not be the legacy of Joe Biden. Is it a good thing? Yes. Am I glad that these political prisoners, that Russia has released these political prisoners? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Great to see them back. And again, I think it was Paul Whelan who said, I'm never going back to Russia. It's like, yeah, duh. Glad to be home. Not going to go back again. Made me laugh when I heard that comment. And the reason I laughed is because I'm glad he's home and safe. These folks separated from their families for a period of time. And I hope that the reporter for the Wall Street Journal feels the same way. I hope he doesn't return to Russia for his own safety, because it'll be the same thing over again. So let's see what you guys are saying. David, I agree with you. We need to save the republic. Absolutely. We need to save the republic. And with respect to the story I shared with you about, voting for Ron Paul, you know what? That might make you feel better about your principles. That's a wasted vote. That's absolutely a waste in my mind. That's my reaction. That's what you can do in a free country. You waste your vote if you decide that's what you want to do. That's a wasted vote because there are things at stake in this country right now that are. Is the Second Amendment one of them? Yes, I absolutely believe it is. You're upset with Trump, but I think, but that's the choice. So do you want to throw your vote away? Really? You want to see a country under Kamala Harris? No, thank you. That's not what I'll be voting for when I go to the polls, and I suspect many of you will not as well. So, and then Steve said, "Everyone have a great weekend. See you on Monday." Yeah, I feel the same way. So we'll wrap it up there. That's 30, about 30 minutes. So thank you, my friends. Looking at the clock on my desk here. Thank you so much for letting me join you. As always, hit the like button and tell friends, will you? If you got friends that you know, especially listen to the program, tell them, "Hey, Belfrage is doing that show on YouTube? Are you watching the 4th hour?" Let them know about it. I really, really do appreciate it. So take care. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again on Monday. So long until then, and may God bless.